We're keeping an eye on the trial in the killing of Ahmaud Arbery. Travis McMichael, which is one of the three men accused of killing Arbery, took the stand earlier today and admitted that, contrary to earlier claims, Arbery did not threaten him in any way. The admission is a blow to the defense, who have been relying on a self-defense argument. The Arbery trial is not the only major ongoing test of America's justice system this week. The trial of Kyle Rittenhouse is also underway. The teenager is accused of killing two men and wounding a third during protests in Kenosha, Wisconsin last August. So joining us now to discuss these cases and more is Yusef Salaam. Yusef is one of the 5 Black and Latino boys who were wrongly accused and convicted of assaulting and raping a woman in Central Park back in 1989. They became known as the Exonerated Five after another man confessed to the crimes. The charges against them have since been vacated. Yusef, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Quicktake. I want to start with the trial for the killing of Ahmaud Arbery. What's surprised you so far, or has anything surprised you?
You know, what surprised me is that we seem like we are still back in the past. You know, we have not moved forward in any sense of the word. And I think when I think about this trial, I think about the Emmett Till trial. You know, I'm saying it incorrectly, but, you know, a lot of people make the incorrect assumption that the victim is the name of the trial itself. You know, I remember when I was watching some of the footage of that trial, they sent it to the jury, and the juror took their time to do what they were going to do. And when they came back with a verdict of not guilty, they asked the jurors on camera, and one of the jurors said, well, we knew we were going to come back with a not guilty verdict. We just wanted to take a soda pop break so that we could appear to do our jobs. I think about this country that we live in, the United States of America. We are divided and unequal, and there are two justice systems that are running rampant in these states. And you would think that we would be more progressive today than we were yesterday. But I'm still, you know, I'm holding my breath, wanting there to be something new that goes on, something positive, more reflective. But unfortunately, what's happening in the streets and then spilling over into the courthouses continue to make me lose hope of this system. And I want to continue to have hope. But yeah.
When you lose hope, that's not a good thing. One lesson that you've learned through your own experience, something you've said, is that instead of going through something, you should grow through something. What is one action that the Black community and the country at large can take to grow through this trial and what we're seeing right now?
I think for the system itself, the system has to grow to be a system that works. When I look at the Constitution of the United States as a part of the totality of the system, we read the words, we the people, and we can take a pregnant pause and test the temperature in the room, and we quickly understand by asking the question, who are we talking about? We know that Black and brown bodies were not considered full human beings. That has never been ratified. And so the scary part is that we are still living in many ways archaic laws. You know, things that are not happening because the system is broken, but it's happening because the system was actually created and working in the way that it was imagined in the minds of its creators. We need reform when it comes to that. We need reform on the whole system itself for there to be true equality and equity going down.
And that's kind of what you've dedicated your life to, because after you were convicted and served time for a crime that you did not commit, you rebuilt your life. You're an activist, you're a motivational speaker. How do you convince people that it is worth the effort to invest in and help reform the criminal system rather than simply giving up on it?
Well, I'm thinking about the future. I say that the future is alive and well, not because of what the system shows itself to be today, but the fact that when I go into high schools, junior high schools, universities, in fact, and I talk to the young people, their eyes are beginning to get brighter and brighter when they hear my story, realizing that my story is not an anomaly, but is part of the systemic issues that we experience in America. What they say to themselves is that I am going to be the change that we need. I am going to be the police officer that is there to protect and serve. I am going to be the judge that is going to provide equity when it comes to adjudicating these cases, the prosecutor, the judges, the lawyers, in fact, all the way down to the forensic scientists and even more. And I think more importantly, too, is that jury pool that we think about often, the people that are there to judge us, that jury pool needs to be educated beyond what they are educated with now, in understanding that they're holding people's lives in the balance. They are the justice that is so-called blind. And oftentimes they're not. We all come into the courthouse of the world or our rooms with preconceived notions as to what things should be. But we need to be able to understand what truly is at stake, our humanity.
So you're saying that people need to be invested in the system overall and see their own role in it. Your story obviously is very powerful, and one way of pursuing, I guess, reform in the criminal justice system is, in some ways, to become a filmmaker. I think of Ava DuVernay's When They See Us, and obviously on the Central Park Jogger case in which you were wrongfully accused, and how that raised awareness and inspired activism. Are streaming services like Netflix a good thing overall for righting historical wrongs, or at least bringing voice to historical wrongs?
1,000%. You know, when people get the opportunity to see the truth be told, oftentimes it's one thing to hear about it. It's one thing for the truth, especially in our case, the Central Park Jogger case itself. That truth was swept underneath the rug. Folks did not get the opportunity to really, truly understand what was going on. They were being tricked right in front of their eyes. Big, bold headlines were saying things like DNA evidence in the case. The former president, Donald Trump, took out full-page ads calling for the state to kill us over almost 32 years ago now, right? And so we think about all of that stuff, the murkiness that it leaves, the residue, the negative residue that it leaves in our minds. And I think when you have the opportunity to tell the truth, you have a Raymond Santana reading his false confession as an adult, and it's reading almost as an adult is speaking it. And then he says, what 14-year-old boy talks like that? And it's as if the public gets the opportunity for the first time to realize how tricked we have been. Well, we are only one of the worms in the can of worms. We are only a microcosm of the cases of the microcosm of cases. The microcosm of the macrocosm of cases just like our case. And it has to be looked in light of the modern eye, you know, these new technologies that we are experiencing, which are brilliant. You know, being able to show these stories worldwide, same day worldwide is important.
Yeah, and spark a global conversation, one that kind of can take over the internet and break the internet for a couple of days as well. I want to get your take on your reaction to the news that Oklahoma's governor has granted clemency to Julius Jones, commuting his death sentence for a 1999 murder that Jones says he did not commit. What was your first thought when you heard that?
You know, my first thought was that I was overjoyed. You know, I worked for the campaign to get Troy Davis free. And unfortunately, they did not listen to us. They executed him, and they execute many of us. But here's a case where we knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that this man did not do this. And yet he still is in prison, and we are overwhelmingly happy that his life has been spared. But there needs to be more. He needs to be freed. And I think when we think about his case in particular, yes, we love the fact that we have some wins, but then we also have some losses. And those losses is that he has not been freed from the confines of a place that he should not be in the first place.
Yeah, and I see that connection once again with streaming services, because there was a film on that as well that brought a lot of attention to the Julius Jones situation. I want to go back to self-defense for a moment here, because this comes up both in the McMichael trial and the Kyle Rittenhouse trial that's taking place right now. Are you keeping an eye on that trial? Because I wonder what you think about the self-defense argument when the victims are white in the Rittenhouse trial versus black.
You know, when I think about that self-defense argument, I think about the facade that we are looking at when it comes to us understanding what really is at stake. On the one hand, you're talking about a young man who, for all intents and purposes, knew that something terribly wrong was happening, and he decided to try to figure out how to figure his way forward. And the way that his actions in regards to Ahmaud Arbery is deemed is that he was then now the aggressor. That is atrocious. And I think that as a people, you know, as a people who are judging this case, we need to understand what this is all about. You cannot use these types of arguments where you're hunting people down for game or for whatever, for sport, for play. and then say, once the person is murdered and executed, oh, we didn't mean for that to happen. Similarly, when you look at the Rittenhouse case, it is unfortunate that this young man thought that it was okay. And more importantly, it is of the utmost unfortunate that his mother thought that it was okay to drive him to that area with a weapon, and for him as a young person to engage in what he thought was to assist. At least that's what he's saying. That is one of the most awful experiences I think we have as people in America. We think that these things are just acts that don't mean anything, but they're all connected, and everybody is at stake. Everybody is at fault, rather. Everyone.
I want to turn now to something else that happened recently. As one of the Exonerated Five, you know firsthand what it feels like to be accused of a crime that you did not commit and to serve time for that. Tell us how you felt when we learned this week that the two men convicted of killing Malcolm X back in the 1960s will be exonerated.
I think that this is one of the most happiest days to find out that the people who had been languishing in prison or who were accused of this crime and went to prison for it were not the ones who did it. We knew, I knew. I mean, here I'm not even born in that time. I knew that there was something terribly wrong with this. I knew that it was impossible for this to happen in the way that they explained it. And so therefore, what this gives us is the opportunity to look at the other side of the story. Who really is involved? Who is the culprit in the murder of our black prince, our black shining prince for that? I get the opportunity to share my story in one of his daughter's classes at John Jay. Ilyasa Shabazz, she welcomes me with open arms to share my story of healing, of overcoming this tragic event. But here it is, we find out so many decades later that these individuals who we knew, whether they had some involvement or not, but the fact that we're finding out that they had no involvement in this crime, it's a happy day because the people who supported, just like when I thought about the people who supported me and my brothers, it was a small group of people. But finally, the truth came out, and the truth came out and gave the people the understanding that we were the ones that needed support from the whole community, that psychosocially we mattered. I got the opportunity to be able to provide my greatest self because the system said, we want you to be here. And by the system, I'm talking about the people in the community, that psychosocial aspect of the family. And I think here it is, some of these individuals, if they're still alive, are in their 80s.
Actually, one of them is alive. Yeah, Muhammad Aziz, he's 83. Khalil Islam died back in 2009. I take it you haven't spoken with Muhammad Aziz. If you were given the opportunity, what would you say to him now after hearing what happened? What is going to happen?
I would definitely say, welcome home. I would probably hug him. I would probably just have a moment of unnamed and unworded energy transferring between he and I, knowing that we had gone through something similar of being, railroaded in a system that doesn't really care about us. They care about our bodies being worked and continue to work as a part of the new Jim Crow system that allows slavery to exist by another name. But just letting him know that we are here, that support system that is necessarily needed for people to be able to be productive again, to be able to take their deoxyribonucleic acid packaged in their baton as they pass it back to the new generations that are coming. They need to know what to do and how to do it because we're in a fight. This is a war. And we are the ones that are losing our lives. We are the ones that are seen as expendable. And I think that we need to be able to put a human face to the tragedy that we are experiencing so that we can move forward as a human family without the division of color or class.
You would show him that you are there and show him that you see him and you hear him. I wonder, Yusef, what is your next step? I know that you're based in the Georgia area, but not so long ago, there were some reports that you were thinking of maybe running for public office, maybe in New York.
Yes. So my next steps, I'm still doing the great work that I've continued to do, working with the Innocence Project and the Marshall Project. I work with my mother and her organization, Justice for the Wrongfully Incarcerated. We're trying to make sure that we give people a fighting chance. And ultimately, it's about not giving up the hope and the dream that is inside of you that you were born with, right? Looking at politics from that perspective, at this particular point, I thought that it might be not advantageous for me to run in this moment, but I'm not giving up my future possibility of putting my hat in the ring, because I know that those individuals that should be at the table should be the ones who are closest to the problem. And I'm of course, one of those who's been on both sides of the fence, working on the outside now, but once was working on the inside on myself and on others that sought my help and assistance, trying to get through this this awful experience. So I think collectively, as we look at what the future may hold, I'm excited as to what that looks like. I'm excited to participate on a very, very high level. It's almost prophetic.
Where would you do that? Would you do that in Georgia, or would you do that in your home state of New York?
I'm still considering the options. Of course, I live in Georgia, and I'm a globetrotter at this particular point in my life. It's easy for me to go here and there and anywhere, but I'm still considering my options.
Okay, Yusef, when you figure them out, please let us know. Yusef Salaam, thank you so much for joining us today.